She said at my promotion dinner, "Can we leave? I'm bored and you're not even that important at your company." My CEO was sitting across from us. I said, "Of course." Then I stood up, apologized to my CEO, and drove her home in complete silence. When I returned to the restaurant alone, and my boss asked what happened, I 32 male recently had my entire life turned upside down by my now ex-girlfriend, and honestly, the way it all unfolded still feels like something out of a movie. We had been together for exactly 3 years. We lived together in a condo that I purchased entirely on my own about a year before we even met. She contributed a bit to groceries and utilities to keep things fair, but I carried the mortgage, the HOA, the insurance, all of it. I work in high-level logistics for a major national supply chain firm. It is not an easy job. The hours are brutal, the stress is consistently high, and my phone is basically glued to my hand. But the payoff is worth it, and I was a clear frontrunner for a massive regional director promotion that would basically set my career up for life. To celebrate making the final cut for this promotion, my boss invited me to an extremely exclusive, invite-only steakhouse downtown. He told me to bring girlfriend along. The catch was that our company CEO was flying in from our corporate headquarters in Chicago and would be joining us. This was not just a fun little celebration dinner. It was a final chemistry test. They wanted to see how I handled myself in a high-status social setting, how I managed conversations, and how my partner fit into the corporate picture. I explained all of this to girlfriend crystal clear. I told her the stakes. I even bought her a new, expensive dress she had been eyeing for weeks just to make the night feel special and show her how much I appreciated her support. The dinner started off well enough. Boss and CEO were trading industry stories, and I was holding my own, steering the conversation when necessary, asking the right questions, and keeping the atmosphere light but professional. But about 20 minutes into the appetizers, girlfriend started shifting in her seat. First, it was a heavy, dramatic sighs. Then, she completely checked out, pulled out her phone, and started blatant, rapid-fire texting right under the table. Boss noticed immediately. He is a good guy and politely tried to bring her into the fold, asking her some friendly questions about her own work in marketing. She gave him a flat, one-word answer, did not even bother to look up from her screen, and took a loud, slurping sip of her cocktail. The temperature at the table completely dropped. It was incredibly awkward. I gently put my hand on her knee under the table, just a silent, gentle plea to dial back the attitude and put the phone away. She physically swatted my hand away. CEO paused the story he was telling, looking directly at her with a very polite but sharp expression. He asked if everything was all right. Girlfriend dropped the phone onto the white tablecloth with a loud clatter. She looked right past CEO, locked eyes with me, and said the words that permanently severed our relationship in 3 seconds flat. "Can we leave? I'm bored and you're not even that important at your company." The silence that followed was suffocating. Boss stared down at his plate, clearly mortified for me. CEO just raised a single eyebrow, his expression totally unreadable. I looked at girlfriend. She had this incredibly smug, defiant tilt to her chin. She was fully expecting me to grovel. She expected me to prioritize her childish tantrum over the 2 men who literally held my entire career in their hands. "Of course," I said. I stood up from the table. I didn't look angry, because honestly, I wasn't in that moment. I was completely empty. I turned to CEO and boss and told them I sincerely apologized for the interruption, asked them to please enjoy the appetizers, and promised I would be right back. I turned and walked straight to the valet stand. She trailed behind me, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble floor of the restaurant. She actually muttered something about how she thought we were going to be stuck with those dinosaurs all night. I didn't say a single word. The valet brought my car around, and we got in. The drive from the downtown restaurant to my condo was exactly 22 minutes. I drove it in complete, dead silence. She tried to turn on the radio to break the tension. I reached over and turned it right back off. She started trying to justify her behavior, complaining about how I wasn't paying her enough attention and how the conversation was boring. I did not even look at her. I just stared at the road. I pulled into the driveway of my condo, kept the car in drive, and unlocked the doors. She got out, slamming the car door hard enough to rattle the windows. The second the door clicked shut, I put the car in reverse, backed out of the driveway, and drove straight back to the restaurant. I walked back to our table just as the appetizers were being cleared. I sat down, calmly smoothed my napkin over my lap, and looked at Boss and CEO. Boss took a slow sip of his bourbon and just asked what happened. I looked directly at CEO and told him it was a temporary lapse in my judgment regarding the company I keep outside of work, but that it had been permanently corrected. Then I smoothly transitioned right back into the business conversation we were having before the interruption. CEO stared at me for a long, very uncomfortable moment. Then the corner of his mouth twitched upward. We finished the dinner. We talked strategy for 2 straight hours. They paid the bill, shook my hand warmly, and CEO told me flat out that I handled a highly volatile situation with commendable detachment. It was a massive win for my career. But driving home later that night, the adrenaline finally wore off. I realized I had just dumped my girlfriend of 3 years by stranding her at our house, and the real nightmare was just beginning. I walked into my condo at midnight. Every single light was blazing. Girlfriend was sitting on the living room couch, arms crossed, just waiting for a fight. She immediately launched into a massive tirade about how I abandoned her, how I humiliated her by not coming inside, and how I owed her the biggest apology of my life for putting my stupid job over her feelings. I just stood in the entryway and told her she had 30 days to find a new place to live, and that we were officially done. She froze. All the fake anger dropped, replaced by genuine, stunned shock. She asked if I was seriously breaking up with her over a dinner. I told her I was breaking up with her because she deliberately tried to sabotage my entire career in front of the CEO of my company, and I told her to sleep in the guest room. I went into the master bedroom and locked the door. I couldn't sleep at all. My mind was racing. The level of disrespect was so high, but the sheer calculation of it was what really bothered me. It didn't feel like just a random childish outburst. It felt like a targeted strike. The next morning, I woke up early. She had already left for work. I walked into the kitchen to make some coffee and saw that she had left her personal tablet sitting on the kitchen island. We never really had a strict policy on checking each other's devices, but we generally respected each other's privacy. I was going to ignore it, but the screen lit up with a notification. It was a message from a contact saved as a fair partner. The preview text read, "Did it work? Did you get him to snap?" My stomach completely dropped. I stared at the screen for a second, feeling my heart pounding in my chest. I picked up the tablet. The passcode was still her birth year. She had never bothered to change it. I unlocked it and opened the messaging app. What I read over the next 20 minutes completely destroyed any lingering sadness I had about the breakup and replaced it with pure, cold clarity. A fair partner was not just some random guy. Based on the context and the LinkedIn profile I quickly searched on my phone, a fair partner was a vice president of sales at the primary rival logistics firm that was constantly trying to undercut our regional roots. Girlfriend had been sleeping with him for at least 6 months. The messages were extensive and incredibly detailed. A fair partner was actively pressuring her to get me to either quit my job or get fired. They discussed my specific accounts. She was actively feeding him passing details I had mentioned at home about my work, client names, rough pricing tiers, stress points in our supply chain. It wasn't strictly classified documents, but it was absolutely enough insider information to give a direct competitor a massive edge in contract negotiations. The dinner stunt had been entirely planned. A fair partner wanted my promotion completely derailed. He told her that if I got passed over for the regional director spot, I would be miserable, resentful, and he could easily recruit me to his firm, bringing my entire multi-million-dollar client portfolio with me. And why was girlfriend helping him do this? Because a fair partner promised to take her on a massive, all-expenses-paid luxury vacation to Cabo with his next commission bonus. She was actively, maliciously trying to ruin my reputation with my CEO so I would be forced into the arms of her fair partner's company, all for a beach trip. I did not delete a single thing. I didn't want her to know I had seen it. Instead, I pulled out my own phone and took crystal clear photos of every single message thread. I made sure the contact info, the phone numbers, and the timestamps were clearly visible. I emailed all the photos to a secure, private backup account that she didn't know about. Then, I placed the tablet exactly where I found it on the kitchen island, completely untouched. When she came home that evening, she tried a completely different tactic. She played the weeping victim. She cried real tears. She said she was just feeling so insecure about how much I worked and just wanted to know that I still prioritize her. She begged me not to throw away 3 solid years over one bad night. I kept my face completely neutral. I told her I just needed space and that we would talk about everything over the weekend. I needed to buy time. I had to secure my assets, protect my career, and make absolutely sure that when I dropped the hammer, she would have zero room to maneuver. The very next morning, I called a lawyer who specialized in civil litigation and property law. I laid out the entire situation. He explained that since she had lived in my condo for 3 years and received mail there, she was legally considered a month-to-month tenant under our state laws, even without a formal written lease. I couldn't just pack her bags and change the locks. If I did that, it would be considered an illegal self-help eviction, and she could actually sue me for damages or force her way back into the house with police assistance. My lawyer told me we were going to do this completely by the book. He drafted a formal 30-day notice to quit. If she did not vacate the premises by midnight on the 30th day, we would file an unlawful detainer lawsuit to have her forcibly removed by the sheriff. I paid his retainer immediately. On my way home, I also stopped at an electronics store and bought 3 discrete, motion-activated interior cameras. I installed them in the main living areas and pointing at the front door while she was at work. I needed to protect myself from any false accusations. That Friday evening, I walked into the living room and handed her the formal legal notice to vacate. She looked down at the document, and the change in her demeanor was terrifying. Her face completely contorted. The fake, apologetic tears vanished instantly, and her true, entitled nature roared right to the surface. She started screaming at me, asking if I was seriously legally evicting her and if I really thought I could kick her out of her own home. I calmly told her it was my home. Her name was nowhere on the deed, and she had exactly 30 days to get her stuff out. She violently shredded the paper right in my face and threw the pieces at my chest. She told me she wasn't going anywhere. She screamed that she knew her rights as a tenant and that she would drag this out in the housing court for a year just to spite me, and that I would end up having to pay her to leave. Then she pulled the daintiest trick imaginable. She grabbed her cell phone from her pocket and dialed 911. Right in front of me, she put on this incredibly convincing, terrified, trembling voice. She told the dispatcher, "Please help, my boyfriend is being highly aggressive, is screaming at me, throwing things, and trying to physically throw me out of our apartment. I'm so scared for my physical safety. Please send someone." She hung up the phone, crossed her arms, and gave me the most evil smirk I have ever seen. She actually said, "Let's see how your precious CEO like a domestic violence charge on your shiny corporate record." I didn't panic. I didn't yell. I just slowly pointed up to the smoke detector above the television, where the tiny lens of one of the new cameras was perfectly hidden. I told her, "Audio and high-definition video, directly uploaded to a secure cloud server." I watched the blood completely drain from her face. She looked like she was going to be sick. When the police arrived about 10 minutes later, she was sitting on the couch crying hysterically, claiming I had shoved her against the wall. I didn't argue with her. I just calmly asked the 2 officers to step into the kitchen with me. I pulled up the security footage on my phone from the last 20 minutes. It showed me standing perfectly still, calmly handing her a piece of paper, and then showed her screaming, shredding the document, threatening me, and completely faking the 911 call while I stood there silently. The officers' demeanors instantly changed from cautious to absolutely furious. They walked right back into the living room and confronted her. They sternly warned her that filing a false police report and misusing the 911 system was a serious crime. Because she legally established residency there, they told me they couldn't force her to leave that night, but they documented the entire incident as a civil property dispute and heavily noted her false allegations and the video evidence in their official report. She scuttled off to the guest room and slammed the door. But her little revenge tour wasn't over. The very next Monday morning, I walked into work and was immediately called into the main HR office. My boss was sitting there alongside the HR director, and they both looked incredibly grim. The HR director told me they had received an anonymous tip over the weekend claiming that I had been secretly downloading proprietary company data and was planning to jump ship to our biggest competitor. I just nodded slowly. I knew exactly what she was trying to do. She was trying to burn my entire life to the ground before her 30 days were up. I told them I had fully anticipated this exact scenario. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a thick, printed packet containing all the clear photos I had taken of her tablet. I slid it across the table to my boss. I explained that my soon-to-be ex-girlfriend was currently having a documented affair with a vice president at our rival firm. I explained that she was the one attempting to sabotage my promotion at the dinner, and when I initiated formal legal eviction proceedings against her over the weekend, she retaliated first with a fake police report, and now with this fake corporate tip. I told them to read the messages, which clearly proved that the rival VP was the one actively soliciting our company's private data through her. My boss read through the printed photos. I watched his jaw physically tighten. He handed the packet to the HR director. Boss immediately ordered IT to pull all of my network logs to verify that absolutely no data had been breached or transferred on my end. Then he looked at HR and said, "As far as I'm concerned, this is an act of corporate espionage from their side, and we are going to handle it." I was completely cleared by IT within 2 hours. But my company was not just going to let her and her little affair partner walk away from this. It was time to return fire, and it was glorious. I sat down with my company's heavy-hitting legal department alongside my boss. They were absolutely livid that a direct competitor's VP was trying to bypass legal non-compete clauses by using an employee's romantic partner to extract insider information. Our legal team drafted a massive, utterly devastating cease and desist letter. They addressed it directly to the rival company CEO and their head of legal affairs. In the letter, we included the photographic evidence. We clearly highlighted the affair partner's exact words, showing him asking for my specific client details and pricing models. Our lawyers stated in no uncertain terms that if this vice president was not immediately terminated and a full internal audit conducted, our firm would file a massive public lawsuit for tortious interference, unfair business practices, and corporate espionage. They sent that letter via certified mail and email on a Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, my lawyer received a phone call from the rival company. They had gone into a total absolute panic. They conducted a rapid, brutal internal investigation, pulled the affair partner's company devices, found the corroborating communications, and fired him on the spot with extreme cause. Because he was terminated for severe ethical violations and corporate misconduct, he completely forfeited his massive severance package, all of his unvested stock options, and his entire quarterly commission bonus. His professional reputation in the logistics industry was instantly radioactive. No one would ever hire him for a high-level position again. Girlfriend found out that same evening. She came bursting out of the guest room, screaming at the top of her lungs, clutching her phone. She yelled, "What the hell did you do?" He lost his job. He says his company is investigating him and is going to sue me. I just looked at her from the couch and replied in the most even, uncaring tone I could muster. "He should sue you. You shared confidential corporate information over text message. Now he has no job, no money, no cabo vacation, and from the sounds of it, absolutely no interest in keeping you around." It was true. He had dumped her immediately. With his massive income completely gone and facing potential legal action from his former employer, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with a woman who carelessly left a digital paper trail of their entire corporate conspiracy on an unlocked tablet on a kitchen counter. The next 3 weeks in the condo were incredibly tense, but silent. She mostly packed her belongings in the dead of night to avoid looking at me. Finally, on the 29th day of her notice, she moved out while I was at the office. I came home to find the apartment mostly empty of her things, but she couldn't leave without one last tantrum. She had deliberately poured a bottle of bleach all over a very expensive vintage rug in the living room, and she had punched a massive hole right through the drywall in the guest room. I didn't get mad. I just documented everything. I took detailed photos, called professional contractors for repair estimates, and got an invoice for the rug replacement. The total damages came out to around $3,500. I didn't let it go. I took all of my documentation, including the initial police report showing her erratic behavior, and filed a civil suit against her in small claims court. She didn't even bother showing up to the court hearing. The judge looked at my mountain of evidence, scoffed at her behavior, and immediately awarded me a full default judgment for the maximum amount. Because she ignored the judgment, I went back to court and got an order to garnish the wages at her marketing job. It took several months to get it all back, but knowing that every single paycheck she received was a little bit lighter because of what she did to me brought me an incredible amount of peace. About 2 weeks after she finally moved out and the dust settled, my boss called me into his office. Our CEO was on the large video conference screen on the wall. CEO looked right at me and smiled. "The regional director position is yours. We tested your composure at that dinner, and you passed. But seeing how you systematically dismantled a corporate espionage threat, protected company assets, and handled a highly volatile personal crisis without missing a single quarterly performance target, that is the exact kind of ruthless, clear-headed efficiency we need in upper management.